On this episode of Urban U, we continue our CUNY Street series with our colleges in Queens and share the history behind the streets where they're located. We'll talk to a journalism professor who's interviewed some of the biggest names in music and meet a student who uses his camera to document everyday life from the DR to Washington Heights. That and a lot more CUNY news and stories. Welcome to a new season of Urban U.
For every street, there is a story of how that street came to be. Once again, we go digging into how the streets that our CUNY schools call home got their names. This month, we look at Queens. Queens is home to 5 CUNY institutions. First up, Queensborough Community College on 56th Avenue, the only school here on a numbered street on the Queens grid. If you've never spent any time in Queens, or honestly, even if you have, depending on who you ask, its grid is often described as somewhere between unique and frustratingly confusing. For example, 56th could mean 56th Street, 56th Avenue, 56th Road, 56th Drive. So why was Queens planned like this? Before being incorporated into New York City proper in 1898, Queens was more a collection of separate towns, all of which had their own street system. So, in 1911, a simple, unified grid was planned. However, as Queens grew, city planners needed to fit more streets. So how do you fit 2 new roads between 64th Street and 65th Street? Well, you could renumber the whole grid. Or you could save the headache and just call them 64th Place and 64th Lane. Problem solved. Next up, Queens College on Cassena Boulevard, named for Cassena Lake. It is thought to have been named in the mid-1800s by horticulturist Samuel B. Parsons. An enthusiast of American Indian culture, he derived the name from the Chippewa language, meaning cool water, despite the Chippewa peoples hailing from the Midwest, not Long Island. Turning south, York College on Guy R. Brewer Boulevard. In the 1960s, an era when Queens politicians were almost entirely white, Guy R. Brewer became one of the first black politicians from Queens to serve in the New York State Assembly, and was the first to serve as its majority whip. Brewer died in 1978, but 4 years later, New York Boulevard was renamed in his honor. Heading to Long Island City now, the CUNY School of Law resides in, appropriately, Court Square, the site of the Long Island City Courthouse. Interesting bit of ironic history here. The architect who redesigned this landmark in 1908 would later be brought up on corruption charges. He would be tried and convicted in his own courthouse. And lastly, we go from irony to a bit of a mystery. LaGuardia Community College sits on Thompson Avenue, and its origins are unclear. The Astoria Historical Society suggested it may just be named for a well-connected land speculator, or, potentially, the area's long history with railways could be a clue, as it seems there were railroad executives named Thompson over the years. Perhaps they lent the name. But without anything concrete, we must end our look into Queens on a cliffhanger. But we'll be right back at it next time to tackle new boroughs, new streets, and new schools. For the record, I'm Ari Goldberg.
Today is a historic day for the City University of New York. We are erasing up to $125 million in debt to at least 50,000 students. This is among the largest debt forgiveness programs of its kind in the entire country, and a major step to ensure a comeback for our students, our university, and our city of New York. We want our students to continue their studies here at CUNY and to thrive in their careers free from the stresses of debt. Through this new CUNY Comeback program, at least 50,000 students and graduates can put their student debt behind them, helping to move past this pandemic once and for all. I look forward to celebrating this news with you all in person this fall.
As the U.S. continues to grapple with issues of equity and inclusion, community colleges continue to play a pivotal role in educating a generation of leaders who might not otherwise have access to higher education. Dr. Larry Johnson became president of Gutman Community College in July of 2021 and joined us for a CUNY Conversation. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for joining us today for a CUNY Conversation. I guess my first question as you've taken office is what originally drew you to Gutman Community College?
Thank you so much, Andrew, for the opportunity. So what drew me to Gutman Community College is really the culture of being in this rich, vibrant ecosystem that we know about is New York, but also the outcomes. I have worked at Hispanic serving institutions and minority serving institutions for almost 20 years. And what really attracted me to Gutman Community College is really its focus on student success, but most importantly, its focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
You recently completed a 3-year appointment on the American Association of Community Colleges Commission on College Readiness. What was that experience like and what did you learn from it?
Oh, Andrew, it was a great experience. One of the, I would say, aspects of that program talked about early college and concurrent enrollment programs, and we currently do a great job here in CUNY with many of those early start programs, but it really talked about the importance of preparing students for success before they actually enter into the community college, but when they actually arrive to the community college, the high impact practices, the learning communities that we must have in place, the intrusive advising that colleges must have in place to help that student to stay on the pathway. We also call guided pathways as well. So in that commission, it was a group of presidents and leaders that really learned about each other in terms of what our programs were at our respective colleges, but really how can we truly advance the student success agenda from an equity lens. Oftentimes when you think about the community college student, we think about students who come to us from underrepresented and underserved communities, but we also think about the students who are first generation college students, and we have to think about them in terms of how are we best preparing those students, placing them on a pathway so that they can be successful.
As the president of the community college, you are essentially the leader. You're the guy carrying the football and the flag and pointing people in the right direction. So when you look out, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, what is your vision for Gutman Community College as everyone moves forward together?
I love that analogy of always integrating sports, because when you think about the role of a team, it is a team dynamic. So I always say to everyone that my role is to be the shepherd of the ideas that are brought to me by faculty, staff, students, alumni, and also our community stakeholders. So I envision that Gutman Community College will continue to be a rich and vibrant organization that is centered around student success, with a great focus on preparing those students with the academic rigor to be successful, truly amplifying our brand locally and also nationally, and ensuring that our students have the best opportunity to be successful, and engaging our community stakeholders to ensure that they understand that we are here for them and that we are here to really add to value proposition, if you will, add to the ecosystem that we know of New York City.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Johnson, thanks so much for joining us and best of luck to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate it.
I was born in Puerto Rico, but when I was 5, I moved to Topeka, Kansas, of all places, as a Kansas-Rican. In total, I've lived in about 11 different states. And I think that really helps me have a better sense of the complexity and diversity of the Puerto Rican community, how there's not really just one Puerto Rican community, but really numerous communities spread across the archipelago and the diaspora. I want students to enjoy what it is to be a nerd, and to come here and nerd out with me. There are so many objects here that are full of magic, honestly, that just are full of a feeling, that are a vibe onto their own. I want to make sure that the first woman to lead Centro it leaves a valuable legacy, opening it up to new perspectives and new scholars, new lines of inquiry, bringing things back to the community.
In a way, I know what I want people to feel when they see my work, but at the same time, I want them to come out with their own experiences.
Jordi Perez's photography has been described as dreamlike. Such praise for the BMCC students' work came after he visited the Dominican Republic in 2019 and began taking shots of the scenic landscape. At the time, he wasn't comfortable with shooting people, but the lifestyle moved him to try his hand.
Being there, I realized that there was such a beauty to it. I knew it was gonna be beautiful, but the people just brought out the photos, and it's on film, so I can't really see them. But just go look into the lens. I'm like I know this is a good shot. And if it wasn't even I just felt something.
From there, he began to formulate Morir Soñando, a thoughtful photo series that captures the simplicity and beauty of his homeland. Morir Soñando means to die dreaming, and it's the given name for a popular drink in the DR. One of Jordi Perez's favorite photos from his series is of these two little boys.
I saw the roses and I saw them right next to it, and I didn't have my camera. I ran inside to get my camera, and I didn't even tell them to move. I was just they're gonna keep talking, they're playing, let me just run, get the camera. I just think the simplicity of them sitting there talking, laughing, enjoying themselves, it's just beautiful.
Another of his favorite,
it's of my uncle's backyard, and it's huge, but it's my mom, my sister, my aunt, and a couple of other family members that still live in that place under a mango tree. That photo, again, I think what I like most about these photos is the simplicity of them just relaxing. Because in New York City, we're all about the hustle, but when we get to Dominican Republic, we're just resting and enjoying the time with each other.
And though New York has a different feel and pace from the DR, his goal is to capture aspects of Dominican culture in Washington Heights, where he lives.
The people, I think I didn't really appreciate the people or the community that was surrounded around Washington Heights when I was younger. I would go to a bodega and I would buy my chips or whatever, and then I would come back. But now I feel I've created a relationship with some people around Washington Heights. My flower lady, she's around the corner. And even if I don't have money for Mother's Day, I didn't have cash on me. And she's just yeah, take it to your mom. People in Washington Heights, which I hope to work with in the future, they're just so joyful and happy about life. I think I want to move that into future sets. And I know that I want that kind of energy on any project I work on.
Such clear ideas for a young talent who fell in love with photography after realizing he didn't want to pursue filmmaking full time. His dream shifted on the set of his very first photo shoot.
My mind was blown. I was you could do this with lighting, and you could do this with the camera, and you could do this with makeup. It was an aha moment. It was amazing.
He plans to continue in film, and so far he's had the privilege of working on TV sets like the popular FX series Pose. But taking his photography to the next level is his ultimate goal. Abby Ashola for Urban U.
You don't know what it's like to be from Staten Island, the birthplace of the Wu-Tang Clan and the birthplace of tennis in America, yet constantly the butt of the joke, stigmatized both within the borough and externally. It's frustrating that my home is known for stereotypes, caricatures, and the death of Eric Gardner, but not known for Sandy Ground, the oldest free black settlement in the U.S. and a stop on the Underground Railroad. Why isn't this told? Why isn't it told that we have one of the highest Sri Lankan and Liberian communities outside of their respective countries? It's so upsetting because Staten Island is seen and spoken about in such a polarizing lens that all nuances are lost, which makes it easier to invalidate the problems we face that are uniquely ours, like having the most expensive toll in the country but a lack of quality jobs. To look at Staten Island as a monolith is destructive, especially since it could be seen as a microcosm of the country. But you wouldn't know that unless you look. My name is Jatik Long, and I'm proud to call myself a Staten Islander.
Still up on Urban U, a tale of two cities that raises the alarm on environmental gentrification. And a rock music critic for the ages who's also a CUNY professor. Stay tuned.
We've been sort of sold this idea that environmental sustainability, urban sustainability is a win-win because we can have economic development and ecological sustainability, and we don't have to sacrifice one for the other. The book is called The Sustainability Myth, Environmental Gentrification and the Politics of Justice. And it's about the process of trying to achieve sustainability in a real estate-driven era. Environmental gentrification is what I call environmental amenities. So environmental improvements like new parks or greenways, things that are considered ecologically friendly, but they usually accompany high-end redevelopment. So it's not that one causes the other, but they kind of go together, they're synergistic. The High Line is a very famous example, of course. Brooklyn Bridge Park is another example where developers got some kind of perks and givebacks for helping to fund that park through fees that they're charging to condo owners. Most people think about Staten Island as being kind of suburban. On the North Shore, it's much more like other parts of New York City in terms of the diversity of populations. There's a lot of immigrant populations living there. Much more urban and also very industrial. It has a long industrial history. So what I found there was that there was this 5-mile strip of industrial properties lining the waterfront. And then there's like a 2-lane road, and then there's residential neighborhoods. So they're very close to all that industrial stuff. It's just like one industrial facility after another, all right on the waterfront. I was really shocked when I first went there to see all of the legacy contaminants and all of the things that people are dealing with. So it's an area that's really suffering a lot in terms of environmental quality. A lot of studies of gentrification focus on the gentrifying neighborhoods. But what I realized is that nobody's looking at what happens to non-gentrifying neighborhoods as this is going on. And I found that there's a very direct relationship. If you're creating so-called sustainable waterfronts in parts of the city, then what happens is they're no longer places where you would put industrial uses because now people are paying a lot of money to live there. So that stuff gets clustered into non-gentrifying waterfronts, which are already burdened by unwanted land uses. So the greening of certain waterfronts that are designated for high-end redevelopment led to the browning of other waterfronts not designated for redevelopment, like on the North Shore. In this book, I trace the fact that communities of color are much more likely to live near industrial facilities. As areas begin to gentrify and environmental improvements are installed, they also whiten so that the communities of color are priced out of the neighborhood, then they have to go to other neighborhoods where there are a lot of industrial facilities. And so this problem of environmental disparities gets reproduced. I'm a big critic of gentrification, and a lot of academics are, but with that comes a lot of things that, in fact, people living in low-income neighborhoods have been fighting for a really long time. I think there are solutions to this problem of displacement, so that I think you can have gentrification without displacement. In some cases, communities have talked about developing land trusts, where they buy up public land and have it as a trust so that it retains its affordability. It can be done through tighter rent controls. But I think really the key is that communities themselves should be involved in the process. They should have say-so over how to preserve that affordable housing because they have a better sense of what their needs are than anybody else would.
There is still something that a song can do. That's what you go to in that moment. They don't talk about, here's the movie we watched when we got married. They talk about, this was the song that we wanted to play. There's still some elusive and, incredibly powerful thing that music can do that nothing else can do.
CUNY professor Alan Light should know. He's been senior writer at Rolling Stone and editor-in-chief at Vibe, Spin, and Tracks.
You've been able to interview most of the big acts in music. If it's okay, I want to mention a couple of these and just get your thoughts. The first one I want to start with is Bono and U2.
For the first shows that they played after September 11th, as it happened, they were starting a tour, early October. And that experience was unlike anything that I have ever been through or will ever be through again. To come into New York City and play Madison Square Garden, it was the first time that 20,000 people, were gathering for an event. And it was the first show where they dropped the screen and ran the names of all the victims for the end of the show, which they ended up doing at the Super Bowl. They had perfected what every second of that show needed to do. It was extraordinary.
The next one is somebody who's had a very big career, Taylor Swift.
So I love Taylor Swift unapologetically and forever. And so I've done, stuff with her over the years. I did a big Billboard cover story with Taylor when the 1989 album came out. And I just think she's so exceptional because everything comes from her.
Are you ready for it?
I have never seen somebody so closely and precisely attuned to her audience, the way that she has grown and grown with them and led them places. That is 100% her.
Let's talk about Mick Jagger.
And I remember this quote from Mick, and he said, people always say that Keith is the passionate one and I'm the brains of the operation or whatever it is, that I'm more strategic. He's like, I am absolutely passionate too. I'm passionate about getting things right.
It's got to be a really interesting partnership.
You absolutely can see, okay, here's how the strengths and weaknesses work together. And also, I get why there are times where these guys cannot stand being around each other. Totally understand that.
The last one I want to ask you about is somebody who I know you really respect. You wrote a book about him and Purple Rain. Tell me about Prince.
This is what it sounds like when doves cry.
And I got a call from Prince's publicist saying, okay, so he's thinking that sometime he might do an interview. He hasn't done one for a long time. And we're thinking that, you could be the guy. And then there's a single that kind of takes off and I get a call, okay, he wants to do it. And I fly to Monte Carlo and spend 3 or 4 days and I go back and write the story. It's the first interview he's done in 5 years and it's great. He liked it. Everybody's happy. It was unlike anything else in the world. I mean, to be with somebody where music just poured out of them 24 hours a day. If it was 3 o'clock in the morning and he was in Dayton or he was in Hamburg or he was anywhere in the world, but he had an idea. There was a studio on standby. There was an engineer on standby. The band knew at any moment, okay, he needs you now, go. That nothing touched him that he didn't bring into his world. I mean, to be that level of genius, and that was actual genius, where everything exists to support your creativity. Your whole life is constructed around that. It's a different reality.
Why do you love writing about music so much?
I guess that I love doing it because it's still and always will be a mystery. There's always a crazy magic trick about writing a song that even songwriters can't really answer beyond a certain point. It's almost like it happened to somebody else or it happened. People talk a lot about being lightning rods or having their antenna up and receiving songs that they just sort of deliver. And so trying to just get as close to understanding that as possible never gets boring, never gets old, never gets predictable.
From mainstream to ethnic music, we leave you with these images from the online concert series brought to you by one of our CUNY colleges and featuring the vibrant Garifuna community right here in the Bronx. Thanks for watching these stories from the nation's largest urban university, the City University of New York.